fencing that's quite high. It's designed for people not to be able to scale it. It's really surrounding the perimeter of Lafayette. The concern around here is that not that there is a threat at the time right now, but just that there could be.
Governor Jay Inslee made the call Friday. Some members of the state's National Guard are on standby as of today.
60 National Guardsmen from 6 states have been activated by their state governors in state active duty status.
The security around Howard University, you will notice increased patrols in key areas downtown and around the White House.
State on high alert. As the U.S. approaches the 2024 general election, a unique sense of urgency and caution has taken hold across many states, none more so than Washington. Known for its progressive stance, Washington has emerged as a leader in election security, with Governor Jay Inslee stepping up efforts to protect both the voting process and public safety. Recognizing the risk of potential disruptions, the governor recently ordered the deployment of National Guard troops across key locations in the state, a bold and unusual move that underscores the high-stakes nature of the current election cycle. While such deployments are typically reserved for disaster relief or other pressing emergencies, this decision reflects a new era where election security is viewed through a lens of potential threat and risk mitigation. The activation of the National Guard isn't solely about maintaining order, it's a statement about the state's commitment to preserving democracy. While some Washingtonians initially questioned the necessity of such a visible show of force, the governor's decision is a proactive stance against the possibility of voter intimidation, cyber attacks, or coordinated efforts to disrupt voting infrastructure. By taking action now, Inslee's administration aims to send a clear message: election integrity will be safeguarded at all costs. This action sets a powerful precedent, especially given the Department of Homeland Security's recent advisory that certain states, Washington included, are at elevated risk for election-related unrest. The governor's office has framed this National Guard activation as a measure of prevention, not reaction, an important distinction that emphasizes the desire to keep Election Day incidents from occurring at all. Adding to the gravity of the situation is the fact that Washington's proactive approach reflects a widespread concern within the federal government about potential threats to the electoral process.
Washington's National Guard is now on standby to assist law enforcement if needed, and several other states are following suit.
Fencing that's quite high. It's designed for people not to be able to scale it. It's really surrounding the perimeter of Lafayette. The concern around here is that not that there is a threat at the time right now, but just that there could be. Businesses that we have seen, they've boarded up their shops just as a precaution. Fencing has also gone up around.
Threats include criminal threats, such as threats to election workers, foreign malign influence.
The security around Howard University, you will notice increased patrols in key areas downtown and around the White House.
With warnings about possible disruptions originating from federal intelligence sources, it's evident that Washington's move is part of a larger, coordinated effort to bolster election security nationwide. The federal government, particularly the DHS, has flagged election infrastructure as a target for bad actors, both domestic and foreign. With a rise in misinformation, escalating political tensions, and previous incident that cast doubt on election security, the DHS has placed increased pressure on states to safeguard the democratic process. Washington's response to these alerts by mobilizing its National Guard is one of the first of its kind, but it likely won't be the last. Other states, taking cues from Washington's lead, may soon consider similar measures if the situation continues to escalate. This deployment is not simply about troops standing guard at polling stations. It's about creating a reassuring presence that reflects the seriousness of the administration's resolve. These National Guard units will not only act as a backup to local law enforcement, but will also be strategically positioned to respond quickly to any threats that could compromise public safety or interfere with voting. Their role goes beyond simple policing. They represent a safeguard for the democratic process itself. By standing ready to handle emergency situations, they're intended to send a message that no attempt to interfere with the election will go unanswered. Escalating security threats. Washington's decision to mobilize the National Guard and enhance security measures isn't a move made lightly. It reflects a deeper response to escalating threats that go far beyond generalized election anxieties. This intervention came directly on the heels of alarming events in the Pacific Northwest. Just days prior to the governor's decisive order, communities in the region faced shocking incidents that sent waves of concern through both local authorities and residents. In Vancouver, Washington, and Portland, Oregon, incendiary devices were detonated near ballot drop boxes, damaging hundreds of ballots and triggering widespread fears about the security of election infrastructure.
KATU captured the moment heavy smoke was seen coming from inside a drop-off ballot box.
And right now the FBI is responding. Police don't know, was this vandalism? Was it something more organized? All of this a concern. The ballot boxes are a target for somebody who may want to make a point. We know in the Vancouver area there.
And analysis of surveillance footage, we have identified a suspect vehicle. There's enough evidence collected at all three scenes that lead us to believe that all three incidents are connected.
These brazen attacks struck at the core of citizens' fundamental rights, casting a shadow over the democratic process and raising urgent questions about election safety. Such incidents are more than just random acts of vandalism. They represent a direct attack on public trust, instilling fear in voters and casting doubt on the state's ability to safeguard their voices. In the wake of these events, Washington's leadership recognized the need for an immediate and unwavering response to prevent further disruption. The government swiftly shifted into a state of heightened alert, fully aware that the stakes had grown considerably. With ongoing reports from the Department of Homeland Security about similar threats surfacing across the country, Washington officials resolved not to take any chances. They saw the writing on the wall and knew that waiting for the situation to worsen was simply not an option. Instead, they moved proactively to protect the rights of their citizens and ensure that the integrity of the election process would remain uncompromised. This rapid deployment of the National Guard, coupled with direct alerts to local law enforcement agencies, underscores a serious commitment to maintaining order and preventing any attempts at election interference. These measures aren't merely about responding to past threats, they're part of a broader strategy aimed at deterrence. By ramping up security and showing a visible presence, Washington sends a clear message to those who would seek to intimidate voters, tamper with ballots, or otherwise undermine the election. Every step taken reinforces the state's unwavering stance that any attempt to disrupt democracy will be met with immediate and resolute action. Washington's proactive approach communicates to voters that their voices matter and that the state is prepared to go to great lengths to protect the sanctity of the democratic process. Legal framework in action. Governor Jay Inslee's recent decision to activate the National Guard highlights the complex legal mechanisms that enable such a deployment, especially during periods marked by escalating threats and potential unrest. This action, rooted in Washington's legal framework, underscores the unique authority vested in state governors to call upon military support when public welfare is at risk. Washington law empowers the governor to mobilize state military resources in times of emergency, ensuring that responses are both lawful and decisive when swift action is required to protect citizen safety and uphold democratic processes. By invoking state-specific statutory provisions, Governor Inslee has taken steps to ensure that the deployment of the National Guard aligns strictly with legal guidelines, a critical component in maintaining both public trust and institutional integrity. The law grants him the ability to activate the Guard not only during traditional emergencies like natural disasters, but also in complex situations that extend beyond the capacities of regular law enforcement. These include instances of election interference, violent protests, and direct attacks on critical state infrastructure. While it's unusual to see National Guard forces activated specifically for election-related security in contemporary times, recent incidents and warnings from the DHS have created an undeniable justification for this heightened response. The legal foundation supporting this deployment is designed to allow not only the presence of National Guard troops, but also an adaptive, responsive strategy that can scale in real time if conditions demand it. For instance, should further incidents unfold, Washington state officials retain the authority to escalate their response by activating additional emergency functions through the state's comprehensive emergency management system. This multi-layered approach provides a robust framework for addressing a broad spectrum of threats, from isolated security breaches to larger coordinated efforts to disrupt public order. Washington's deployment strategy, therefore, reflects a commitment to thorough preparedness, both in immediate terms and for potential escalation. By ensuring that legal channels for such actions are clearly defined, the state government underscores its dedication to using all available legal tools to protect public institutions and safeguard the democratic process during this critical time. This legally grounded approach not only bolsters Washington's response capabilities, but also sends a strong message about the priority placed on election integrity and public safety. With a structured legal pathway in place, Washington is equipped to meet a range of challenges, providing the public with reassurance that their rights and safety will be protected even in the face of unprecedented threats. Unseen federal dynamics. While Washington's response has taken center stage, it's also part of a broader, less visible federal dynamic. The federal government, specifically through the Department of Defense and DHS, has contingency plans for civil unrest scenarios that could arise around election time. Recent discussions have highlighted the DoD's Directive 5240.01, a document that allows intelligence components within the DoD to provide temporary assistance to state and local authorities under extreme circumstances, including situations of severe unrest.
Governor Jay Inslee made the call Friday. Some members of the state's National Guard are on standby as of today.
60 National Guardsmen from 6 states have been activated by their state governors and state active duty status.
The directive outlines procedures for intelligence units to step in temporarily, up to 72 hours, without immediate authorization from the Secretary of Defense, though subsequent approval is required for extended actions. While Washington's National Guard activation isn't tied to this directive, the directive's existence hints at a broader strategy that federal agencies may employ if unrest escalates. This directive suggests a possible coordinated effort between state and federal authorities should election tensions grow uncontrollable. The influence of DHS's warnings on Washington's decision is just one example of the many ways federal and state authorities are intertwined in a mission to prevent disruption. The DoD's potential involvement, should it become necessary, would add yet another layer to an already intense security operation, underscoring the lengths to which the nation is prepared to go to protect its democratic processes. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.